We're doing server backup and restore for the accidental DBA. The accidental DBAs are those people that aren't necessarily full-time DBAs or aren't trained as DBAs and kind of get stuck with a SQL Server, or as somebody said recently, they get voluntold into managing the SQL Server. Today we have Grant Fritchey with us. He's the Scary DBA at scarydba.com, and Grant also works for Redgate Software with me. He is a product evangelist for a different group at Redgate, but he does, well, I don't know what he does. He does something. At least they keep paying him, so we're good there. If you have, everybody's muted today. If you have questions, and you should have a control panel on the side of your screen with a little question tab in there, and please feel free to ask questions in there. I will either answer those or present them to Grant, or we'll get somebody at Redgate to answer them later if we don't have the answers, and then we'll post those answers on redgate.com and SQLServerCentral.com later on. So without further ado, everybody, let's get started. And Grant, go ahead, take it away.
Okay, have you switched it over?
I'm switching it right now to...
All right, let me know when you see the title screen. Oh, wait, I have to do something to share my desktop, don't I?
Yep, just should we get a little button there?
There we go, show my screen. And now you guys see Twitter instead of the thing I had up.
Yeah, no tweet deck.
There we go.
Excellent. Take it away.
Okay, cool. All right, so backup and restore for the accidental DBA. That's what we're looking at today. Right, our agenda. Well, we're going to talk about backups. The full log backup restores best practices, and off we will go. Okay, who am I? Grant Fritchey is my name. I'm product evangelist for Redgate Software, and I really like saying that, so I repeat it sometimes. So if you hear me saying that over and over again, pay no attention. I'm just crazy. And Microsoft MVP, past chapter president, written a couple of books, and no one cares about any of that stuff. Let's get started. Right, database backups. Database backups. Databases are kind of important. Why? Well, because that's where businesses store their information. They store their information on databases for lots of good reasons, and the thing is, you need to protect it. Stuff happens. Things occur. Hardware breaks. Sunspots. Nuclear war. Zombie attack. I don't know. Stuff breaks down. And because stuff breaks down, you can lose all the information for your business. So database backups are primarily a business-driven decision. It's a business need. It needs to be defined, at least initially, by the business. It's absolutely a vital technology. Backing up your databases, creating a viable copy of your databases, something you can use to restore at a later point in time should something bad happen, is completely a vital part of the business. It's not so much a technology. I mean, today we're going to primarily talk about technology, but I don't want you to forget that it's absolutely a major part of the business. And finally, database backups are absolutely step one for setting up a disaster recovery mechanism. If something goes wrong, if your site burns down, if there's an earthquake, and you've got to get your data to another place, in most cases, a backup is the beginning. Yeah, there's all kinds of really, really, really high-end stuff you could also do to co-locate and do these other things. But even so, the beginning of this process is going to require database backups. Now, because of that, there are a series of questions that I really strongly recommend you ask the business. Now, I don't want to read through these, but it's a series of questions that you're going to ask the business, and you need to get answers to, because the answers to these questions are going to determine when, how, where, why you set up your backups. Now, how important is the database? That's an easy one, but the second one is the hardest one, and that's the question: is how much time can we afford to lose if we lose this database? How much downtime can we get? Now, the initial answer for almost every business, every time I've asked this question of every person I've ever asked this question of, their first response is 0. We can't afford to lose nothing. And then you start saying, okay, well, that's only about $10 million, I think, or did it go up? Maybe it's 15 to 20. And suddenly it's like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe we can afford to lose an hour. Maybe we could afford to lose 15 minutes. And then once you've got that answer, then you can start making decisions on how you're setting up your backups. And so you need to go through these things, regulations, encryption, all that sort of stuff. These are all questions you're going to ask the business. They're not technology questions. They really are business questions. And so the business gives you this information, and once you've got that, then you can begin working on building out a backup plan. But today what we're going to primarily talk about is how to do backups, how backups work. So the backup types we have, we've got full backup, log backup, differentials, file group backups, and then this funky thing called snapshot backups. Now it's included as backups. It's not really technically a backup, but it sort of is, so we include it. But all we're going to talk about today are full and log backups. Those are our primary things. We're going to talk about those. We'll also get to restore a little later. So the full backup. Now the thing about the full backup is and this is one I've had to have this conversation so many times with so many people, technology people, not just business people. It is a complete copy. It's a bit-by-bit copy of the database. It really is. And so, as such, it can't accidentally drop a row. It can't have a different version of the stored procedure than what was backed up. It can't subtly modify code. It's a copy. It's a copy. It's a copy. So you need to know that going in, it's going to be a copy of the database. When you take that full backup, you're going to get a copy. Now, the interesting part is that there are some bits and pieces that are different, and that's because of transactions. When a transaction's occurring on the database, when you run a backup, there's going to be a marker placed in the log. Any transactions that complete while you're doing your backup, those are going to get captured and they're going to be rolled forward. Those transactions will actually be applied when you restore your database. And any transactions that are open, that never finished or started and didn't finish while you're running your backup, those will be rolled back. So yeah, it is possible to sort of see some variation on data when you run your backup, but you got to remember though that the backup itself is a complete copy at that moment in time of completed transactions, and it's it just is. It's a conversation I've had so many times. There's one of the companies I live at. You go in there and say bit by bit copy, and somebody's going to go, "Oh, have you been talking to Grant?" Because that phrase was repeated quite a lot. Also, now full backups are the foundation. They are the beginning of everything else you do. If you are using file backups, file group backups, differential backups, great. If you're going to start using log backups, great. But full backups are required as a starting point for all of those. And so you're going to be using full backups in most cases, all the time. Right, most all the time. Way to go. Right. So just some general full backup best practices. You want to schedule them. You want them to be on a regular schedule so you know when they are. I'm positive you're a capable guy or woman, and you're going to, be very aware of your systems, and you're going to run the backups yourself. Well, okay, but what if you're on vacation, or what if you were sick, or what if the bus was late, or what if? Schedule these things. Another best practice I'm going to recommend: individual files. Out of the box, if you click the buttons on the GUI, which we'll go over in just a second, you're going to see that backups can be stacked inside of a single file. It more or less adds each new backup to one file. The problem with that is that you can only see that one file. Now, you may have one backup in there, you may have 50. You don't know. Now, if the file's constantly growing in size, that may be an indicator that's got more than one backup in it. But better still, record your backups into individual files with the database name and a date and a time, so you know what it is that you're backing up. I also really, really recommend that you use checksum. Checksum is a way to validate data. It does a little mathematical calculation. It validates the data prior to writing it to disk, and it records that value that it calculated on the disk with the backup, and it can be used later when you're trying to verify the backups. It is an added cost. It's an added overhead to your backups. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it isn't. It is. But in most cases, you should use it. Unless you're in an extremely stressed environment with terabytes of data and stuff, then you may not want to. But in most cases, you really should. It's going to help you. Also, consistency checks, DBCC, check DB. You're going to want to run that before or after you run the backup to validate that what you've backed up, what you've got, is a good database on the backups. You can run it offline, which means you restore the database and do a consistency check there, because again, it's a bit-by-bit copy, and so if there's a problem with the storage when you back it up, you're still going to have a problem with the storage in the backup. So just general best practices, a few notes, some things that you need to keep an eye on. Right, backups. SQL Server comes with Management Studio GUI. You can right-click on a database, select, and get a menu choice, and select tasks. And in the tasks, there's going to be backup. You select backup. This is the window that pops up. And so you see right up there, you get to pick the database you want. You're going to pick, the database type, backup type is already selected. It's right there, and it's full in this case. And then what are you backing up? And you can also set your backup set so that it deletes after a certain number of days. Blah blah blah. It's all fun stuff. Then you have to come down here and click either tape or disk and hit add. It's somewhat problematic using this tool because you have to know what backups are. You're not really walked through the process. You kind of have to have an understanding of exactly what you're planning ahead of time, and you need to, you're going to have to hit documentation, and you're going to have to walk in here and figure this stuff out, because it's not going to really help you figure out what you're doing, where, why, and how. So after you've done the first screen and you've got things set up, you would go to this option screen. You don't have to go to the option screen. You could just hit go at this point. But you'll notice if you do that, right at the top, you are immediately appending to the existing backup set. So that thing I recommended where you do individual files, well, you're already violating that if you immediately hit go. So what you want to do instead is overwrite all existing backup sets and give this thing a unique name. You can also hit down here. You see perform checksum. That's something else you want to switch on. And verify the backup when it's finished is an option, but we'll talk about verify it later. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Backups, talking about backups are not difficult, but you need to understand all the options, what they are, and why you're doing them. So that's why I'm trying to walk you through this stuff so that you can set it up yourselves. Now that's the GUI. I'm not a fan of the GUI. You got a question?
Yeah, Grant, I was just real quick. Could you just go over checksums again real quick? Somebody was asking. They were a little bit confused. Okay. Checksum is
as a backup is occurring. I'm not going to get into the detail, mainly because my name's not Paul Randall. Checksum is a calculation that's written against the data, that's done against the data, and it comes up with a value, and that value is written out with the data prior to the thing being written, and after it's written, it's rechecked, and if everything was written correctly, then you've got a good write, and it continues going on. And then those same checksums are available later to validate the backup to make sure it's still good. Okay, does that basically explain it? And that's something I recommend you turn on. Now, having said that, that description I just gave you is an added overhead to your backup cost. So it is something extra that you have to do, but it helps ensure that the backups you have are good. And something I haven't said, and I meant to be repeated over and over again through this thing. If your backups are no good, if you cannot restore your backups, then you might as well have not taken them. So you need to make sure that you've got good backups. That's just vital. You need to have as many methods of testing your backups as you can get, and checksum is one of the ways to start that. All right. As I said, the GUI is nice and all, although it doesn't really help you a whole lot. It doesn't give you direction. But TSQL is where you can really take command of the data of the backups. Now the beginning is really simple. Backup database is your initial command. X, whatever database you're backing up. To some location, and then off you go. But to do the extra things that I've already recommended you do, you have to then add a with statement with a init that will keep you from appending your backup sets together. Again, you'll be able to go with an initial one file per backup, and then with checksum. I prefer it. I like it. But this would be a basic backup command. There's nothing complex about it, but the idea here is that you get a lot more control through TSQL. If you're an accidental DBA, this is your first time doing this kind of stuff, this is the areas where you're going to want to start to experiment with. Simply using the GUI is okay, but one, it doesn't give you the direction you need, and two, it doesn't give you as much control as you're going to get with TSQL. Now, this is Redgate, so we're also going to mention SQL Backup Pro. SQL Backup Pro is a backup utility. It's pretty handy. It's pretty cool, and I'm going to show you some of the things it does. And the one thing I want to point out is the splash screen, because every software's got a splash screen. Our splash screen is kind of cool in that it gives you little hints on how to use the tool better as every time you restart it. So I've got 3 of the splash screens up. The initial screen when it comes up, just to run you through, it's really straightforward. You can see over here on the left you've got multiple servers, and I've let the license expire on my virtual server. I need to get that fixed. And then you can run backup just by clicking a button, run restore just by clicking a button, or getting into scheduled jobs and all that stuff. And you get a timeline showing you all the interesting information. We'll go over this some more in a little bit. I just want to show you if you hit a backup, instead of the GUI through Management Studio, this GUI is going to give you a lot of guidance. It's going to walk you through which server are you backing up is your initial thing. And so it's going to let you know. You get to pick which server. You get to decide whether or not this is a server you're interested in. And you can even create templates so that you're reusing those backups if they're set up a particular way. For example, you've got the checksum set. You've made it so it's naming the files right. You can save that as a template. Again, like the initial GUI, we get to pick what type of backup. We're going to do a full. You get to pick which databases we're backing up. We're going to back up the same one as before, AdventureWorks 2008. You can pick multiple databases from here, which makes it a little bit more flexible than the SSMS GUI, and you can make a lot more changes to it. Again, we're going to go with the oops. I hate that stupid thing. Sorry about that. We're going to go with the single backup file. We can overwrite existing, and the one thing I really like about the tool is it has an automatic file namer, and the automatic file namer does exactly what I'm telling you ought to do on your own, which is database name, date, and time. And so you don't have to worry about where is this thing going. You know. You can visually see the files directly on the file system and know that you've got a backup from yesterday or know that you've got a backup from last week. It also makes it easier if you're doing a multi-stage backup system where you back up your database to file, and then 2, 3, 4 days later you move that off to tape or off to an off-site storage facility, and then you want to go back to that in a week or a month. You can go and say, well, I need it for this particular day, and someone can go and look and get the file, as opposed to, well, okay, let me think. We'll have to look in there, and then we'll restore, and then we'll run queries against it. It becomes really problematic. So having this file name is the right way to go. It really is. Again, you can overwrite the existing database, and you can put in the options of deleting. It's all good stuff. We also offer you the ability directly from within this tool to copy your backup across the network, which gives you added facility and added protection, because you can create 2 copies of your backup as you go. We also give you compression. SQL Server does as well, but only in 2008 and standard and above. If you're at a lower version of SQL Server, 2005, 2000, you don't get compression. If you're running 2008 Express, you also don't get compression, but we can compress all those backups. We can also encrypt your backup. If you've got a business need, and again, it's a business need to do encryption, then you can do it here. Obviously, we also have the verify backup just like the SSMS does. Finally, it comes out and it gives you a summary screen that lets you control, and decide whether or not you've got everything set up the way you want to, and you hit finish and off it goes. Now, that said, I find our GUI extremely helpful. I find our GUI very informative. It walks you through what you need to set up, how you need to set things up. I still don't like GUIs. So we can go to the command line and we can run TSQL. We've got an extended store procedure, SQL Backup, lives in your master database, and you can make it run exactly the same stuff that you can run through the GUI and more, with more control and a lot more flexibility and a lot more power. And it's my preferred mechanism. And I think once you kind of get your feet completely and thoroughly wet with doing backups, you're going to want to go with TSQL as well. Now, log backups. We mentioned them earlier, but now we're going to dig into them a little bit more. Databases come in 3 basic recovery modes: full, bulk log, and simple. And what they basically are doing is they're telling you how they're going to be able to store the log information on the database. Now, logs are recording of the transactions that have occurred on that database. Every insert, every delete, every update, as it occurs, gets written out to the log. If you are in full or bulk log, that log is kept until you tell it otherwise, until you do one of 2 things. You either tell it to truncate the log, which you should not do, because if you're in full or bulk log, you're keeping the log on purpose. You're keeping the log so that you can do a point-in-time recovery for your business. Your business has said, we don't want to lose any more than 15 minutes. Okay, great. If you don't want to lose any more than 15 minutes, you put your database into full recovery mode. You run a full backup, say, once a day or once every 12 hours, and then in between time, you run log backups every 15 minutes. And then you can, at any point in time, restore the full backup and all the log backups. And yeah, there's differential backups and other things you can do, but we're just talking a general picture here. And that way you can restore to a particular point in time. And that's why you run them. While running them, if you don't while set in full and bulk log recovery, if you don't run log backups, your log will continue to fill. Even if you run full backups, the full backup by itself does not truncate the log. You can give it a command to truncate the log, which is different, but it won't itself truncate the log. So you need to do that yourself by running log backups. And you know, that's why you would set up a database in full recovery. If you don't need log backups, if you don't want a point-in-time recovery, there's no reason to have your database in full recovery. So make sure you just turn that right off. Change it over to simple, and off you go. Run your full backups once a day or once a week or whatever it is, with the knowledge, of course, that if you only have once a week backups, then you could lose an entire week's worth of data. So, you know, and again, that's a business call. If the business says, yeah, we don't care, then you don't care. Of course, they might care, and then they could change their minds, and that's when things get fun. Just like log backups, I recommend individual files, just like full backups, sorry. I recommend individual files for the log backups. I also recommend you use checksums of log backups. And because the log is all your transactions as they occur, I would not run it less than once an hour. I'd probably run it quite a lot more. I mean, at least every 15 minutes. Personally, the most frequently I've run it myself is every 3 minutes, and that recovery on those was so much work. But that was the business need. They said we can't lose more than 3 minutes. 3 minutes we can live with, but more than that would cause problems for us. And so we had to run a log backup every 3 minutes. It's messy, but there you go. So log backups with Management Studio are not really all that different from a full backup. What you're doing is on the backup type, you're selecting transaction log. Now, notice I'm on a different database because I have my AdventureWorks database set to simple recovery, so I don't have to worry about it. I don't want to have to mess with the log backups, but I do have other backups set up so that I can experiment and test them. So you see that one there, my movie management database. That's my Play database. And then other than that, it's pretty much the same. You're going to set up a disk. You're going to give it a file name or tape. I know most people are going to disk these days. Tape's on its way out. And then the options are roughly the same, whether or not you have checks on whether or not you set those things up. It's all more or less the same, but you're doing a log backup. Same thing with the TSQL. It's not complicated. Log backups are no more complicated than a full backup. You're going to back up log to disk equals some path to a drive folder and a file name. If you wanted to use the Redgate SQL backup and you were doing these, it's roughly the same thing. You're going to be walked through the wizard in more or less the same way. Pick the server, pick the databases that you're interested in, set up the log backups. Most of the options are identical. A couple of interesting points is that when you're setting it up, you can tell it to only show me databases that are in full recovery. So I've got databases, you can only see these 3 because those are the only ones that can do a log backup. Everything else on my server right now is in simple recovery. Mainly because if you look, most of it's AdventureWorks or the management data warehouse, and I kind of don't care if all that stuff goes away tomorrow. I can rebuild it in a heartbeat. As a matter of fact, with AdventureWorks, I do rebuild it on a regular basis. All right, so that's log backups. Like I said, it's quick and easy. Log backups are not hard. Steve, in any log backup questions I need to sweat? Because I'm not looking at the questions as they come by. Okay, cool. I'm going to keep going.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, great.
There's a couple things. Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Somebody was asking about a log backup, so they include uncommitted transactions in there.
No. No, it's only gonna back up what's committed. That's the only thing it can, because that transaction could be rolled back, and in which case you would have backed up something that doesn't exist.
Okay. Somebody asked what types of databases might not need full recovery mode.
What types of databases?
Yeah.
Databases that can lose more data is what I would say.
Okay.
I wish there was a way to mute this.
Yeah. Somebody also asked where you put TSQL code in Management Studio. Can you just flip over and show them a query window?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Yeah, let's do that real quick. This is a query window, and if I wanted to back up a database from here, it's pretty simple. Backup, database, and pick a database, AdventureWorks. And by the way, that's all SQL prompt, making my life easier. To disk equals, I think I'm G : nowadays. I'll show you my ADW R2, R2, whatever, dot back. That's it. I mean, ta-da, I've done a backup. And it finished. And you can do with an it, comma, checksum, and now you run it. And if we're going to run the same backup again, and instead of stacking it, it's going to replace it. Okay?
Yep. There you go. All right, go ahead and keep going.
All right, restores. All right, backups are easy. Backups are simple. Backups are wonderful and good, and you should be doing them. Restores are hard. Now, not hard physically. The technology I'm doing on a restore is actually very, very simple. It's not hard at all. But the thing about restores is that you are frequently going to be doing restores in less than optimal circumstances, meaning at 3 a.m., someone in another country, we'll assume most of you guys are over in Europe, and so you're sitting there, and at 3 a.m., somebody in Australia decided to dump a table, and you're the on-call DBA, and so, I'm sorry, you're the accidental DBA, but someone shoved a phone in your hand, and so now you get a call at 3 a.m. Yeah, we've dropped the table. We need to do a restore. Ooh, okay. I haven't done a restore yet. Practice your restores. Practice, 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 practice. I can't tell you, I cannot possibly say that one often enough. Practice your restores. Make sure you know how to do a restore. You just can't possibly be prepared enough, because, I mean, and I've done this myself. I've been in the situation. Somebody dropped the table, somebody dropped the database, something got horribly screwed up, there was a server outage. I mean, all of these things have happened. And you're sitting there in your desk, it's not 3 a.m., it's the middle of the day. And that's worse, because now your boss is standing behind you. You're in your tiny little cube with your boss in there, and her boss, and his boss, and their boss, and they're all inside your cube with you. The last thing you want to do is be going on to Books Online saying, yeah, I don't remember how to do this. Hang on a second. Oh, practice your restores. You just don't want to be in that situation. A couple of more pieces of advice for restores. Make sure you're on the right server. I don't know if everyone has done this, but most of the people I've met have done this at least once, and I too am guilty. One time, I restored my database. It was a simple thing. This was a relaxed, comfortable, Grant, we need you to restore production database because we need to run some tests. We want you to restore it down to a QA system. Sure, no problem. Let me restore it for you. And so I went in and I hit restore, and I had connections on it. I was like, oh, those goofs, they're already connected up, and I haven't finished my restore yet. Let me kill their connections, run my restore, and off we go. And that was a production database. Oops. Oh gosh, don't run. Make sure you're on the right server when you run a restore. Now, restores have a thing called verify only. You can use that to test that the backup is good, except verify only doesn't check everything inside that data, inside that backup. There's bits and pieces of the header that of the backup headers and backup footers that are not checked by verify only. So you get a mostly checked backup if you run verify only, but you don't get a completely checked backup. So you can still have a backup that is bad, that there are problems with, even if you've run restore with verify only. Because what restore with verify only does is it runs through and it checks against all the checksums that you had, and it checks the configuration of the file, and if the configuration is good and the checksums are good, it says, hey, you've got a good backup. What it doesn't do is restore the database. And the only way to have a 100% validation that the backup you have is good is to run the restore. Until you've restored the database, you don't know that your backup is good. A strong recommendation, I don't have it written down here, but strong recommendation, if you've got vital databases that are just 100% vital to your system, 100% vital to the business, I would practice restoring those on a regular basis. If I would, in fact, automate a restore so it's constantly running once a day. So you know if you've ever gotten a bad backup, you've run a restore on that, and when the restore dies, you can go in and go, oh, we've got a bad backup for Wednesday. We need to do something and fix that immediately, and you can. As far as restores go, you can also use the basic restore operation is pretty straightforward, but there's one statement you might want, and it's called move. And that allows you to copy a database. You can run a restore on a server that has the same database, and you can give it a new name and just copy the files over to another location. Or it allows you, if you're restoring to a different server, to run a restore without having to worry about the fact that that server has a different disk configuration than the server you're backing up from. And that's about it for restores. Let's, come on. Whoop, whoa, hey, there we go. Sorry about that, out of control. Right, restore from the GUI. Pretty straightforward stuff. Again, right-click on the database, right-click, select tasks, select restore. It pops up. It has the database you're on, and you can do restore from the database. And in fact, what it's doing is it's looking on MSDB where you've done your backups, and it's validating that this database has backups available, and it shows them to you right down here in a list, and you can select that restore, click OK, and you're done. It's that easy to run a restore. If you wanted to, you can type up here in the to database area and change the name of the database. Now, that's how you would do a copy, but then you would also have to do a move. And I don't have the options page on my GUI here, so you would have to, in the options page, you can move the files around, and you see how that's done. A restore operation from TSQL, that's it. Restore database from disk, and then the disk location. Again, if you've got to do a copy or if you're moving between servers, you may have to do a move, but wouldn't sweat that. Restore from SQL Backup Pro is almost as easy as everything else I've outlined. No, actually it is. It's just as easy as everything else I've outlined. Again, you get to pick whether you're going from history or from another location. And if you're going from history, it knows the server, it knows the database, and it knows the backups that have been run. So this one's run a series of full backups and transaction log backups, and I get to pick what I want. Once I've picked it, it actually will go in and look and validate that, okay, well, based on the backup you're running, you've got everything you need. Because I could have multiple files. I could have, I could be trying to do a point-in-time recovery. I could be doing something, any number of things. Backup Pro will validate that the backups I'm referencing are all the backups that I need. Then I can decide whether or not I want to overwrite or create a new database, and if I decide to overwrite, it just does it. If I need to create a new one, I can do the move right here just below. The files are all set up for me, and they're immediately apparent. So again, the GUI here very much walks you through the process as opposed to assuming that you've got already a full knowledge of the process. Oh, and also kill any existing connection to the database as part of the restore process. That's really easy to do. Again, going back to that, make sure you're not on production part, you know, believe me, everyone's done it at least once. Make yourself the exception. Don't do it.
Hey, Grant, somebody mentioned real quick, on one of your slides just back up there that you kind of glossed over a bullet point about with move. Can you keep flipping back? Hold on. Yeah, there at the bottom.
Right. So what was the question?
They said that you just didn't say anything about this bullet point when you were rolling through there. Can
Oh,
you just cover it again real quick?
I did, yeah, but I'll hit it again, sure. With move is if you need to copy a database or restore to a server that has different disk configurations, the restore operation itself, if you're restoring a backup from the server that you know, if you're doing a restore of a database on the server that it was backed up from, all you have to do is run restore database and you're done. Otherwise, if you're copying the database on the server or you're restoring to a new server, you need to add an extra statement called with move. And the move statement, you define the various files. I could show you here. This has two files, movie management and movie management log, and their locations are here. Here's the path and the file names. And what you would have to do is modify these values over here to a different name. Call it movie management 2 or movie management copy and movie management copy underscore log or something. And then you could copy that database in place, create a second copy of the database. You'd also have to change the name up here. Or on the, if you were doing it in Management Studio, Management Studio would change the name here, and in TSQL you would change the name right there. You just type in a different name. You can restore and say restore database, Dinglefarb from disk equals, and it could be a restore for AdventureWorks. So you can create things right on the fly as long as you use the move statement. Let's see, where were we? Here. So it does walk you into the point-in-time style recovery where you can leave things in recovery mode, but you don't want that generally. So what the default here is all set, and that's something you wouldn't have to worry about most of the time in TSQL. And then it shows you a summary of what you've chosen, and you can hit finish, and it will do the restore. It's a little more complicated, in all honesty, than the SSMS GUI. However, it's walking you through the process a lot better than the SSMS GUI does. So if you're, if you're a new guy, if you're the accidental DBA, having this ability to learn how to do it and what to do is going to make a big difference. So once again, what do I prefer? I prefer TSQL. So you can go right back to our extended store procedure, SQL Backup, and then just pass it. I'm doing SQL restore database X from disk equals, and it's more or less the exact same thing as you would do from TSQL, just a slight variation that you have these extra commands. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. There's no surprises, no shocks. Now, I talked earlier about the need to automate. You must automate these processes. You don't want to have to rely on the fact, that you are always going to be there. I've no doubt that you would make it run, but you may not always be there. Do you want to make it run on a Saturday? I don't. If it's my day off, I want it to be my day off as much as possible. So you need to automate it. How do you automate it? Well, luckily SQL Server provides us with a tool, SQL Agent. SQL Agent's extremely easy to use. There's almost nothing to it. It more or less walks you right through everything you need to know. But in general, you're going to create a job and do that by right-clicking on the SQL Agent icon itself, and it opens up this window. You can then give it a name. You can add information, give it an owner, all kinds of fun stuff. Then you move on, and you create steps. Again, steps are very easy. You click the New button, and it's going to open up a window, and you can create a step. The step I've created here is very straightforward. What I've done is I've created a step. I'm calling it exec master SQL backup. So this step is actually executing the SQL Backup Pro backup utility through TSQL, so I can control what it does and how it does it, and that's all there is to it. So there's, you can go into the advanced tab and have it do output error codes or send alerts or all kinds of fun stuff. But in general, this is all you need to do is create a step and put in some TSQL code, and then it will run that TSQL code for you. Next thing you have to do is create a schedule. Again, click the New button. Or you can even pick from an existing schedule. If you've already got a weekly schedule set up, you can pick that from another job and use it that way. Give the schedule a name. Decide whether or not it's recurring or a one-time thing, whether or not it's enabled. Set up a frequency. So mine runs once a week on all the weekdays. I could run it once a week on Saturday. I mean, pick and choose however you want to do it. You can run it hourly, weekly, daily, and then pick or choose, in those various, things. You can have it occur once. You can have it occur every so often. I mean, your business drives these needs, not me. So you make the decisions what it is that you have to do, and then you get, and it's a nice, very nice, clear English description at the end. This occurs every week on Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Done. Now, and that's it. That's it for SQL Agent. That's all you have to do to set it up. Once you've got that running, it will run. One point I probably should bring out is that SQL Agent runs under its own security context, so you need to make sure that that the agent has access to files, file groups, directories that you're trying to write backups to. Okay, a little bit more about SQL Backup Pro. The cool things about SQL Backup Pro that I want to bring out, I mean, there's probably a ton that could be brought out, but the ones that I like, it's multi-server. You've got, from a single location, you can take direct control of a lot of your servers. It's got built-in reporting. Most importantly for me, anyway, you can generate a report that shows all your failed backups. Easy, quick, and simple, and complete. It's got a beautiful timeline. I'll show you this in a second. I just love the timeline. It's so cool. You can set up log shipping automatically through this GUI, and that's very handy if you've got to set up log shipping. Log shipping can be very difficult to do, and it's got a whole bunch of views on the data that you wouldn't normally get. So here's the SQL Backup GUI. Not complicated, easy to do. You want to run a backup, you click Backup, and you can run through the screens that we've already covered. You want to run a restore, you click Restore, and you run through the screens we already covered. I'm not going to get into that stuff. You want to schedule backup jobs. You can go in here and then create what looks like, using the exact same stuff that you're used to using, set up backups for your systems, set up backups for your user drives, but you can actually create your backups any way you want and schedule them all from within this one tool. So let's back up all user databases, do a full backup, and create a schedule. And notice this is roughly, not exactly, but roughly the agent schedule. The reason that is because ultimately what happens is this thing creates, let's go over here, give me a second. I did 2 demos today, so this is set up for the first demo. It creates this job, and it does it all for you automatically. So even though I've told you, go in here and do your own TSQL, you can actually have the Redgate tool set it all up for you, and it sets up the entire thing. It records all the databases you're backing up to, the disk you're backing it up to, whether or not you've got retry, compression, blah, blah, blah. It's all set up right there for you, and off it goes. I really like it. I'm lazy. I don't mind admitting, and so I get it. Now, here's the thing. Stop doing that. Here's the timeline, and the reason I like this is because you can look at it different ways. Now, what I've got right now is historical, so it's showing me all the backups on this server, and you can see at 8 a.m. here are the backups as they occurred. and you can see which backup took the longest. So it was my management data warehouse took the longest. Or no, not quite. There you go. Redgate monitor database backup took a little longer. I mean, just the backup, by the way, the length is just based on the size of the data involved. But you can actually see the backups as they're occurring. If they were red, that means they failed, or they're green, that means they succeeded. You can look at them in progress, which right now I don't have any in progress. You can look at the log copy queue, which is part of the log shipping, and you can look at the jobs set up for this server. And you can see the Redgate, notice the Redgate SQL Server jobs that are set up. I've got full backup jobs, and I've got transaction backup jobs already set up through my server. And frankly, I love the ability to set those all up this way. Now, the one other thing I wanted to bring up here was the reporting, because you can set it up for a single server or multi-server. You can look at the backup history, or my favorite, you can look at failed backups. So let's look at failed backups. Let's look at failed backups for my server, and we'll look at them for the last week. Okay? Generate the report, and now I've got a report. This is wonderful. If you've got multiple servers and you've got to be able to look at these things and manage them, you want to know what's going on. Now you'll notice my backup has got, yes, that is 20 pages worth of failed backups. I have an external drive that I use as my backups, and I intentionally don't worry about resetting it, because most of the backups that I'm running, you'll notice I'm backing up AdventureWorks. I kind of don't care if AdventureWorks gets backed up, really, but I set it up so it backs up in order to be able to demo this for you guys, but I also set it up so that it can fail occasionally, or in this case, a lot, and then I can show you this report, because I love this report. I love the ability to go in and see all the failed backups all at once. So it's just something, you know, I'm sorry, I'm really in love with it, because I want to know what backups I don't have, because the backups I don't have, I can't restore. And if you can't restore them, I almost guarantee you that's the database that's going to fail next week. You know, you know, Murphy listens and he attacks the weakness. So you want to make sure that you're not, you know, in that situation. Let's see, a couple other things. If I look at the database, I can see the backups that have occurred on the database, and you can see my failed backup. You can click on those moments in time, and it will take you back to that moment in time when the failed backup occurred. Again, AdventureWorks, do I care? No, not that big a deal. But you get to see what goes on. Successful backups for the last 3 days when I was getting ready for this presentation. And, you know, that's how it works. Nothing complicated. Question?
Hey, Grant, somebody was asking, can you select multiple databases to restore it all at once in SQL Backup?
You know what? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm game. Everybody else game? Let's try it.
Yeah, somebody says you can. You know, I've never tried it. I think it's radio buttons. You can't do it.
I don't see that you can here.
Yeah. No, it's one at a time, huh?
Yeah, it looks like restores are one at a time, guys. I am sorry. That's something I hadn't thought of before. Huh.
Yeah.
No, restores are one at a time. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hate to disappoint.
Well, you know, it happens. It's one of those things. You know,
Yeah,
never restore.
At least that one should have gone out on Twitter.
Yeah, somebody said select restore from file. Let me see if I can try that here.
Oh, okay.
Maybe let's do it.
Well, hang on. Let me bounce back. I'm game. I can do this. Never type during demos. Ha, ha, ha. G, back up. There they are. Let's go with that one and that one, and I need to clean these out clearly. And that one. Okay, so now I've got 4 backup files. Okay, well, it likes them all. Oh, only one full backup can be restored at one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a wish list item or an enhancement request that needs to be done.
Right. That would have been really handy. That would have been cool. Nuts. Okay, well, yeah, we're definitely going to talk to the developers about that one, guys. All right, and hopefully the ladies wrote that down. Let's see, general best practices on backups. Just some stuff that you need, stuff to keep in mind. Automate, 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 automate. Automate the backup process. You really need to. That's one of those, like practicing your restores. You cannot do this well enough. You must automate this stuff. Most importantly, on the automation, you should automate alerts. You need to automate when failures occur. And you can do that right through SQL Agent. You don't have to do anything fancy. You can do it right through there. It can send emails. It can send text messages. And it's not that hard to set up. You definitely should. When available, I really strongly recommend you use backup compression. Why? Not because I care about your disk space. Disks are cheap. I've got a 1 terabyte drive here. It costs like $90. A terabyte's way more than I need, but $90, I got a terabyte, and now I can back up anything for a long, long time. The reason I'm recommending you use compression is because compression's a pretty cool thing. What it does is it compresses the file. And you think, well, yeah, Grant, I get it. It compresses the file, so I save file space. No, it compresses the file, so it has to write less stuff to disk. If it has to write fewer things to disk, it actually goes faster. So you get faster backups by using compression. So that's why I recommend it. It speeds up your backup time. It cuts down on contention inside for resources inside your system, except of course for CPU. But it speeds up the entire process. So you're less intrusive for a shorter period of time. It's great. Definitely use compression. But you can only do it when it's available. So it kind of depends on which version of SQL Server you're on, whether or not you can do it. Unless, of course, you use some Redgate products. Document your backup and restore processes. You must write down what's being backed up and when. Yes, depending on the business, you may have very generic. We back up full backups once a week. We run differentials once a day. We do log backups for the rest of the day, and we do that for all our servers. That may be your document. Great, write that down. Probably you're going to be getting in a situation where you go, well, this database on this server gets backed up daily. This database on this server gets backed up once a week. This database on the same server gets backed up once a week and gets differentials and log backups. You need to write all this stuff down. Most of the time, there's exceptions all over the place. There just are. We had a situation where we were doing a lot of BizTalk, and we had to set it up a very particular way on the backups in order to be able to coordinate our backups with the file system guys. And so that server was set up completely different from every other server in the system. We had to write that down. Why? Because there's that bus driven by Murphy that runs around hitting developers. Well, it also hits database professionals. So you might get knocked out by it, and in which case someone else is coming in to take over, and they would sure appreciate the fact you've written stuff down. Heck, you might just forget. You set up a good set of automation on a server. It's running backups. It alerts you. Everything's working great. You don't really pay attention to it. And then 6 months, 9 months later, someone says, hey, what kind of backups are we running on the server? And you're like, well, crud, I don't know. Let me go look at it and see if I can figure out. Are we running it from this agent? Are we running it someplace else? You've got a documentation. That's why you want it. Finally, use verify only for partial validation of your backups. I really recommend verify only. Just remember that keyword partial. It doesn't do everything. There's a document that we wrote. I'm not going to go through this list. There's a document we wrote up for accidental DBAs that kind of gives them a run-through on the basics of all the things they should look at, the checklists of things that they should use and verify. And this is the checklist. And the document itself is available here. It's on SimpleTalk. It's database administration, SQL Server Backup and Restore for the accidental DBA. It's the same, Backup and Restore for the accidental DBA. You search for that, you'll find it. It's the same name as the presentation today. Another article that I recommend, shouldn't say recommend, another article I wrote, I don't want to recommend my articles, but I want to point you to them, is SQL Server 2005 backups. Now, it doesn't cover everything that's available in 2008. There's some new functionality, but there's not a lot of new functionality. if you're an accidental DBA, if you're just learning about full backups and just learning about log backups, that document has everything you need. I promise. It covers it all. So that one's, again, easy 2005 backups, and it's also on Simple Talk. So those are the two documents I'd recommend. You definitely, pick up any good book on SQL Server. One of my favorite ones, if you're just getting started, is Ross Mystery's SQL Server 2008 Management and Administration from Sam's. It's a good book. Plus Ross is a great guy, so that's one I don't mind recommending. And that's all I have. So we've got about 3 minutes left, according to my watch. Any questions?
Yeah, somebody was asking, can you just show in SQL Backup how you set checksum?
No, because what you have to do is set that in the TSQL statement in Agent. You can't actually do it from
the GUI.
The GUI. You have to go into here, and what am I doing? Some days I'm slow. I get there eventually. You go into here, and come on. Hey, this is my server. This isn't me.
You need a new server.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm not going to show you. You go into the command line and just add it to the with statement inside the command line, and it will work just fine. But there's not a checkbox in the GUI.
Okay. Somebody else asked if they do a backup of the MDF, LDF, is that good enough instead of running backups?
No, not at all. The way SQL Server works is those files are constantly locked. You can't get good backups of them. And even if you can, even if you do a low-level backup, those low-level backups where they can copy the files even though it's locked, they're not transactionally aware. So you will get a copy of the database, but when you go to try to reattach those things, they will be incorrect. They will have uncommitted transactions, and it will fail. So you will run into major issues. You can do that if you've got some of the SAN systems come with these really funky low-level copy mechanisms that are actually transactional aware. So they know that there are transactions going on, and they're able to only capture committed data. So if you are looking to do that, that is the key word and tricky phrase that you need to ask the SAN guys. Is it transactionally aware? And there are plenty of them out there that are. And some of the really, really huge multi-terabyte systems that need to do backups generally don't go to SQL Backup. They use that approach.
Okay. Somebody asked about the same thing. If you do a snapshot of the virtual machine, that'll get you back to that point in time. It should get you back to that point in time, but it's a risky thing.
Again, transactions are the issue.
Yeah.
If there are open transactions when you run that snapshot, unless that snapshot mechanism is able to
freeze I/O.
Yeah.
You have to freeze everything in memory and in the I/O. I mean, it should work with a snap.
I've seen that break.
Yeah, it could break though.
It's not an approach I would take.
Yeah, it's not a good plan.
Yeah, unless I had, again, if it's transactionally aware, go for it. I think it's, I think it's a great technology if it's transactionally aware. I mean, I'm not one of those paranoid database guys who's like, no, we're only going to run SQL Backup. No, man, I'm game. Let's plug stuff in and have fun and make my life easier, make your life easier. Go for it. But but it has to work right.
Okay, two quick ones. One, is there best practice for validating restored database that you recommend?
Yeah, run the restore. That is the best practice. I'm serious. I mean, I'm not being facetious. I'm absolutely serious. That is the best practice. You want to validate a backup, you run the restore. The second choice is you run checksum and verify and restore with verify only. That is honestly the second choice because it is incomplete. It will not give you a complete validation.
Okay, and then real quick, can you cover restoring logs in sequence so somebody knows?
No, because that's not real quick.
Okay.
Basically, I'll give you a rough overview. The rough overview is that you restore the database, and then you use a with statement, and you say with no recovery. And so now you've got the database set up, and then you start doing logs in sequence. So you store each log, and at the end of each log, you either say, yeah, I'm done, and say with recovery, or you say, nope, I've got another log coming, and so you say with no recovery, and keep going that way until you reach the point at which you want to stop. And using that, you can also do what's called stop at and provide a date and time, and then you can just continually feed them in, and it will stop itself at the right point, and then you just have to tell it, restore database with recovery, and it will come back up.
Okay.
But that's I'd thought about doing a demo on that, but it's based on the other information that we had to cover today. There was just not going to be enough time to get all that in, all of that in.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you what, I'm going to let people go now. We'll call it quits since it's 11 o'clock. Got a few more questions that I'll try to answer here, and then we'll try to get all this stuff posted later on. Grant, anything you want to close with?
Yeah, practice your restores. Go out and practice your restores right now. That's it. Other than that, thank you for coming.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great, whatever today is, Thursday, and look for another webinar next month. And if you have more questions, please feel free to, you can post them at SQL Server Central in the forums, or send them into Redgate, sales@Redgate, and somebody will get you an answer. Thanks a lot.